Let's go now live to London and speak with our correspondent there, Jonathan Sacerdoti. Jonathan, what do we know about these latest arrests in this investigation?
Hi, Caleb. Well, we know that these two new arrests brings the total number of people still in custody to 10, and police have called these significant arrests, which is somewhat different from those initial ones. But what they're doing is effectively arresting people who they say are on suspicion of preparing acts of terrorism. The question is now whether or not they're related to the act of terrorism that took place on Wednesday on Westminster Bridge, just outside the parliamentary estate, or whether these are other people peripherally connected, but not necessarily involved in that attack. And meanwhile, there's also been the revelation from some media that it appears that the WhatsApp messaging application had been used by Masood only 3 minutes before the attack time. So police will be asking whether or not he was perhaps contacting other people who had helped him plan the attack, or whether this is just coincidental. Obviously, it's a fairly popular app that many people use at different times. But this would help them answer whether he is a sole terrorist acting on his own, inspired by Islamist terrorism, or whether he's somebody who's carrying out a wider plan which involved more people.
And what do we know more about how he became radicalized during this period leading up to the attack?
Yes, we hear a lot of that word radicalized, people having been radicalized in the UK in discussions of terror. Of course, it gives a sort of passive sense, as if this didn't happen to people of their own accord. It's believed that he may have become more radical in prison, as he is somebody with previous convictions, including for grievous bodily harm and other knife attacks. If that's the case, it wouldn't be the first time that's happened. There is a problem in British prisons of extremist Islam and Islamist preachers and others spreading their message, and those prisoners that are in there sometimes coming out with affiliation to those extremists, and they're willing to do further damage to society through Islamist attacks like the one we saw on Wednesday.
Jonathan, as facts come out, is there second guessing now going on about the security services, the way they handled this situation leading up to the attack?
Obviously, there are always questions about how things could have been handled better, but in this example, it seems clear that ISIS's call for cars and knives to be a method of attack against those in the West has worked, not because of the failures of the intelligence services, but because it's very difficult for the intelligence services to predict when that sort of thing is going to happen. It doesn't necessarily require anything more than one person getting up one morning and deciding to use a car or a knife that they have access to already. That's very difficult to intercept beforehand for police and intelligence services. That could be what's happening here. And to some extent, if that's the only kind of attack that has slipped through their net, when there has been the threat of much more major attacks like those that took place in Paris and Brussels in recent months and years, then the intelligence services could be said to be doing rather a good job in preventing larger attacks. Obviously, it's always tragic when people die or are injured in an attack like this one, and they will be looking at ways they could perhaps predict these sorts of things in future, but it's very difficult.
Jonathan Sacerdoti, thank you for that report.